The headings that we find in our English Bibles aren't actually part of the original. They've been added in much later by editors, and they may or may not be helpful. All that is except in the Psalms. The titles that we find in the Psalms are part of the originals, and the one today is really informative. It helps us understand what's going on. It says, "A prayer of an afflicted person who has grown weak and pours out a lament before God." It's telling us why this psalmist is writing. He's writing because he's in a real state. He's in real trouble. It's his personal lament. Just for example, see verse 4 and 5 to see the state that he's in. "My heart is blighted and withered like grass. I forget to eat my food. I am in distress and I groan aloud. I am reduced to skin and bones." This guy is in real state, real trouble. And he calls out to God to save him. And not just him, in fact, but to save Israel, to save the rest of his people, who it seems are in a state as well. But I just want to zoom in on the last little section of this psalm from verse 23 onwards. Because you see, the psalmist takes this moment of personal struggle and actually uses it for good. As he's confronted by the brevity, the fragility of his own life, it seems like he's stricken by some illness perhaps. His days are in danger of being cut short. But he uses this moment of reflection of his own circumstances to think about God. And so confronted by the shortness of his life, he meditates on God's eternity. As he remembers how short his life is, he remembers God's character, his nature, that he is eternal. And so he compares God not only to himself, but actually even to the creation, and sees that God, in fact, will outlast not only him, but creation as well. Now, actually, the writer of the Hebrews takes some of these verses, verses 26 and 27, 28, and applies them to Jesus. Jesus, the creator of all things, the one who will know no end. And he applies them to Jesus to show that Jesus is much better than the angels. And so we can use these times of real personal struggle for good, as long as we don't turn inward in self-pity, but actually times of real weakness of ourselves can help us to remember and appreciate how strong God is. When we're aware of our own fragility and own shortness of life, we remember God and his enormous power and his everlasting nature. And so you might be struggling at the moment. We use that to remember who God is and apply those wonderful things we see about God to yourself.